run up and do something.
And so they're trying to give me, they want me to sign this.
When we had the same
Okay.
guy, that was at the
How you doing, Patsy?
meeting.
Good. Good to hear.
Well,
after last week. Oh, yeah, right. That was a long day.
Well, today was too.
Guy.
I got up
What'd you do today?
You look like you could be visiting here.
at 7:30 to get prepped for my
Someone
MRI.
would use
It was supposed to have been at 8.
I'm not,
But you know how that can
and
be.
you can't do that anyway.
Running late.
Delayed.
Right.
Even if it wasn't in there until about 40 or something.
That doesn't matter, they don't.
And then
If you had
all of a
Teddy
sudden it
Whitney,
hit me.
you'd
I was like,
Doesn't matter for what, that's usually.
I'm laying there in the MRI going,
Oh, I see. Well, people use
I have to be in the same
damage property.
Yeah.
And
Yoda as well.
I use the bus.
he says I
Is
can
at
do it,
11:10.
That'd be easy.
but the walk.
There's no
Stop
way
talking.
I'm gonna make it through this appointment into St. Paul. And I'm laying there. His headphones on and I'm supposed to be not moving and I'm just thinking this going,
Right.
not gonna work too well.
And I said, no, I can't because I'm.
But it worked.
Well, I
Right to take my medication.
emailed back to,
You're late.
I believe it comes from Ken.
It's kind of nice to have a house. It's in.
Of course.
It's her
Can
nature.
you
Can't be carpetbagger.
send me the,
Is that okay?
Good to know.
Talk to him, he'll tell you.
I was joined,
They'll kick us out of the
and can you also
We've already had
put a pack
residents
of them,
ask about where it is, Nikki's.
send them to the doctor's office?
At a place.
I went straight up.
Oh, did you?
The first thing he does, I asked them.
People are always funny like
We'll
that.
see.
All right, let's do this, folks.
They got me in an hour early.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us as we work through just a real small technical issue. It is 12:35 on, June? The June 4th installment of the Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee. Let's do just a real quick introduction in the room and starting with Eric.
Eric Henriksen, Minnesota Council on Disability.
Patty Thorson, Trellis.
Kevin Petrie, Recording Secretary.
And Daryl Paulson, I'm District F and also the Vice Chair.
David Fenley, Chair.
Cheryl Schmidt, Metro Mobility.
Julie Sellner, Metro Mobility.
Patsy Murphy, Precinct C.
Doug Cook, Metro Transit.
Claudia Fugly, MNCCD.
Awesome, thank you all very much. And I think we have Michelle online. You want to introduce yourself? Once we get that.
Yep, Michelle Segerson, Minnesota
Awesome.
Council on Disability.
All right, cool.
We still don't have 9 folks, so we're gonna skip
Don't have a
over.
quorum.
Not
You
yet,
should have
no.
told me that, Kevin. I would have stayed home. I told you that.
I think we have a couple appointments in the process too, so that should be happening here pretty soon. Thank you for roll call, folks. Are you gonna do the land acknowledgement again, Eric, or should I read it?
I can do it again.
You read it, okay. Yeah, please, by all means, can we do the Dakota water, land, and people acknowledgement, please?
The Metropolitan Council acknowledges that the land we currently call Minnesota, and specifically the 7-county region, is the ancestral homeland of the Dakota Iote, who are present and active contributors to our thriving region. As part of the Metropolitan Council's committee to address the unresolved legacy of genocide, dispossession, and settler colonialism, and the fact that government institutes, including Metropolitan Council, benefited economically, politically, and institutionally after the forcible removal of the Dakota Iote, the Metropolitan Council is dedicated to instilling land, water, and people commitments in regional policy. These commitments support the Dakota Iote, the 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota, Ho-Chunk Nation, and the American Indian communities representing over 150 diverse tribal nations that call the 7-county region home.
Thank you very much. Let's dive right into the agenda. Bus overhead sign guidelines. Nathan, hello.
Hello.
Welcome back, I think. You've been here before.
Yes, for the pocket schedule thing last year.
Thank you.
I'm assuming, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Perfect, okay.
There's a
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm
Hello.
Nathan. Good to go?
Yes, hello. Take it away.
Hello. I'm Nathan Bakken. I'm in Transit Information. I'm the Transit Information Data Coordinator. And today I am here to talk about guidelines for bus overhead signs on the Metro Transit fleet. So the purpose of this project is to develop standards for what is displayed on the overhead signs, the destination, streets traveled on, abbreviations, symbols, and font sizes. Currently, there are a number of inconsistencies, so we're looking to line those up to be better, more consistent for people. So far, some of the guidelines we've proposed that we've been working through is to have a default of 2 rotating panels. 3 can be used if there are space constraints. We've recognized that when you're waiting at the bus stop, that you have a very limited amount of time to determine whether or not the bus you want is going where you're going. So we want to use less panels if we can. When it comes to street abbreviations, we're going to follow the United States Postal Service standards so that we have a uniform standard across there. We are proposing removing the words rapid and limited stop from BRT and certain limited stop routes, but we do want to retain the word express on express routes, predominantly because express refers to a different fare type. So we want people to know that the difference there. And then when you look at the bus signs, the street traveled on will be listed first, followed by the end destination. And today, in a lot of places where we have just the word downtown on buses, we want to replace it with downtown Minneapolis or downtown St. Paul, especially for someone who might not know that it's going to that downtown if it's the first time they're riding that route. Go
Can I
ahead.
ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just so I understand the lingo, when you say rotating panels, is that the visible display, and then that's considered one panel? So one piece of information, and then a second piece of information would come in, and that'd be like the second panel?
Yes. So like you'll always see the route number or the name of the route, but then the portion next to the right of it, there you can fit so much in one space, and then you have to rotate to another panel to show the additional information. So we want our standard to be 2 so that you're rotating less and not having to be like, oh shoot, I just missed the bus because I was waiting for it to say something and I didn't get to see that.
Thank you.
One moment here. It does not want to move forward. Oh, there we go. Okay. So we have a request for some feedback from TAAC. So there's one thing that we do not have consensus on yet. And is whether or not the word line should be included for letter bus rapid transit routes. So that's like the A line, the B line, etc. So I have some images here to show the difference, what they would look like and everything. And I kind of just want some general feedback on what you think looks the best, from an accessibility viewpoint and everything. So here we go. So option 1 here, include line, that is what we do today. So if you're out waiting for the A line, etc., you will see that full word B line down on the front of the bus, on the side of the bus, and the back of the bus, as well as you see the destination to the side. And then option 2 is just displaying the letter there next to the destination. The reasoning that some people prefer this one from our working group standard is that it does give us the ability to standardize font sizes because of the space on the signs with space constraints. It also allows us to show more information around destinations and streets if needed. But yeah, I just kind of want to open the floor to see what people think about those 2 different options.
I would say I like the word line on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Patsy, sorry.
Okay, so you like that option 1 better? Okay.
Take it away.
And I would say the same thing. As you're talking about consistency, consistency of words, phrases, I think is important because it can it just it makes it, if somebody's new to the system, it refers to this, it makes clear that it's referring to the same thing. I know one of our other members has talked about that. Heidi has talked about consistency in that way.
I say, this is Patsy again, I say the, having the line there, back when I was riding the buses very consistently, sometimes that very beginning number, I'll call it, may be unable to be read because there's a light or two out or something on it. Or I have seen where maybe, I'll call it a 57, or no, I'll use the 18. I used to take the 18 all the time. And there's an 18 and there may be an A or a B or a G or an H.
Yeah.
So just seeing a B up there, my first thought was, is that the B line or is that a bus that's a 18B? Or maybe that was 18 and the one is missing, and I think that's an 18 when it says B.
You make a good point there, that that has come up in our working group as well.
But there are, so far at least, I don't think we have anything called an 18 line that somebody could
Right.
mix up.
I just want to bring up real quick, you mentioned consistency, which is what we're looking to do. Some of the people in my working group have said that, so when you look at the color BRT lines, so orange line, red line, and gold line now, we don't have the space on the overhead signs to display line for those. So in those situations, we do only show orange, red, and gold. So some people on my working group are like, well, if we're going for consistency, why aren't we doing the same thing for the lettered lines? So what do people think about that?
I'll go for it again. I think that, it'd be great to be able to do orange line or be consistent that way. But colors, the names of colors written out, there aren't other connotations, like, as Patsy was saying about confusing it with, 18B or 19B. So I guess that's.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Anybody else have thoughts? I don't really have an opinion either way, short of one just looks cleaner. I'm enjoying what Patty and Patsy are.
Okay, so you think the line version looks cleaner, correct?
Without the line, that's just my
You think, okay.
visually aesthetic.
You think that looks more
opinion.
cleaner? Okay,
Cleaner,
understood.
Besides being visually, aesthetically better looking.
Yeah, if it is aesthetically pleasing, but it doesn't convey information, then it's,
And I'm definitely not dying on that hill. I don't care.
So, just point of clarification, you like the word line, or you do not like the word line?
I do, because that's what it's called in.
You do
I
what?
do like the word line, because when we are just talking orally, we say the B line. We don't just say B. And
Right, so I'm gonna go out on a limb, does the, like the A line, the B line, the C line, and the, like, those lines, are those arterial lines versus like the B line?
Yeah, the A, B, and C, D lines, those are the arterial bus rapid transit lines.
And that's why they say the word line versus like a color, right?
Well, the colors are referred to as orange line, red line, and gold line. There is just not the space on the overhead sign to fit the word line for
I
those.
understand that, but what I'm saying is what we obviously colored those or made those colored for a reason. And we've obviously left like the A line and the B line and the C line. We didn't color those. And so there's obviously reasons why. And so what is the reason? One is arterial and one is not arterial, or what?
So that's not my department of expertise, but as far as I'm aware, the reason that like certain BRT routes get a color is because those projects start at the county level when they're a transitway project, and they move down to Metro Transit to be implemented, whereas the arterial BRT lines start internally within Metro Transit and get planned that way. Yeah. And usually the color lines are going to have some form of dedicated right-of-way, and that's why they have a color for their name, while the arterial lines don't always have some form of dedicated lane. That's kind of the exception with the B line, though, because they did put in bus lanes along Lake Street. But that's usually the differing factor between the two different types of bus rapid transit.
Okay.
Thank you, that was helpful.
You're
One
welcome.
one other reason I could see for including line, and this isn't necessarily an accessibility thing, but to avoid faux pas, like what's Bunyan line? Or there could be even worse ones in the future if words come together and it's like, oh, we didn't mean that A to be in front of that word. Now it looks like a different word.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that before. Yeah, someone could just interpret that as there's a weird space, like weird spacing or something. Yeah, and it's one word.
Good point.
Line avoids that, but there could be other strange iterations too that, I mean, I guess you could probably, have every single line and every single stop and see if it makes it silly.
Yep, and then if the letter goes out, I mean, sometimes you'll see it anyway, they'll have, not very often, but they'll have half of the screen will be out because just the lights go out, so I mean.
Go ahead, Doug.
Can you go back to option 1? So I'm curious from this group. So they got Beeline in the front one where it's in kind of a highlighted box versus the side where it's not in a highlighted box. Which one do you guys prefer?
The front, the highlighted one.
Highlight.
For me, it comes down to when you have two different font sizes, one's bold, one's not, and it probably has to do with how many dots you're working with. If anything, I'd even recommend on the side just making it all consistent, either bold or Union Depot as well, which I think you could probably do with that spacing, maybe not, but it plays with the eyes where it's kind of, the side one's just a little tricky for me.
Yeah, as far as I recall, the side one, it's a hardware constraint. I think for the the negative space that is behind on the front and the back ones, the dots that fill in the back space. I don't believe the side panels are able to do that. I will double check, and if it is an option that we can do to make it more consistent, that would be great. But you're also saying, let me just clear, that the font sizes between Beeline and Union Depot on the side is kind of throwing you off?
Yeah, so if they were the same, that might be a level of clarity.
Okay, I think we are looking into that too. I do think the current issue is the space constraints, but we'll look into it.
I get the idea that the front being highlighted behind it is to be differentiating
That it's a different type of.
the bus number or whatever you want to call it. Whereas what is black on the back side, behind it, is the destination, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so then on the side, I will go with that obviously then they're bolding that B line to differentiate what bus it is. So that must, I'm just guessing, Eric, filled in, highlighted, or bolded, pardon me, and filled in is the way they're differentiating from what the line is, or the destinations. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I know you want to standardize things, and what I'm about to say is probably just not standardizing anything at all, but wouldn't there be options to say, well, the front could say, because it looks clean, concise, you're looking for a bus, you've seen it down the road, B line, Union Depot, that looks great. The side, if there's little issues, couldn't the side then go to exclude line where it just says B Union Depot, which is clear? Now, they're not technically standardized, but it's still conveying the same message in both scenarios. With if you exclude it, it's going with B, and people are just going to have to learn it's the B line. Where in the front, if it's explicit B line Union Depot because of the hardware that we're working with, it looks clear. side goes to exclude it, and even the back could still say B line as well. So the side is kind of just,
This,
is a different, I'm not in your world of standardization and, you know, how this kind of stuff works, but I could see that making sense as well, too.
it's been a while since I've ridden regular transit, but my memory of riding regular transit is that you see the sideline maybe the most. I don't know.
I think if you're standing at a bus stop and you're looking down the street, you're more likely to see the front panel, and then you would see the side panel when the bus pulls up and picks you up. Yeah.
I would agree with that. That's what I was going to say, Patty, because I used to go to work and I would go into downtown Minneapolis, standing on Marquette.
Yeah.
You've got, you know,
Bazillion.
sometimes 4 or 5 buses coming at you.
Yep. And so go ahead.
And then seeing that front is like, oh, well, that's a, you know, I'm just going to say, that's a 10. Oh, here's a 20. Oh, 30. This is what I want. Mm-hmm. And then, yes, getting in, seeing that side was always good to confirm. Yeah, I'm getting on the 30. That's what I want.
Right. Yeah.
Going back to the colors, what's the chances of like saying just for the red line, just putting an R there? Instead of changing colors all the time. Put R for red, O for orange.
Jeez.
If you get a P for purple, whatever it might be.
Are you thinking on the front or like on the back panel? Or just all of the panels?
Well, then the blue line and the B line would be the same line.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I will forgot to say, the light rail overhead signs are out of scope for this project.
Yeah.
So it's just bus, but,
Something that's going to be easy to read for anybody that might have a vision issue.
Yeah.
Changing colors could be a little difficult.
Yeah.
Well, let me just clarify. So we spell out the words because the hardware doesn't allow.
Yep.
We do not have the overhead signs that allow for color LED lighting, which is something we have discussed, but it's not within the scope of this project. But the one issue I do see with just doing a P or an R and O for orange is that our arterial BRT program is consistently pumping out more BRT lines. And at some point, we're going to get to the R line and the O line and the P line. So that seems like there would be a butting of heads there at that point.
Or not there yet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on a robust discussion that I didn't think was going to be robust, but it was?
And the one letter for those colored ones may be easily, I'll change it. Well, it's not as easy to tell if you just have an O versus orange. Maybe, especially visually wise, you may be going, is that a P or is that a B? No, maybe that's an O. Or is that an M? Is that an N?
Yeah.
So yeah, saying the word orange.
Yeah. Something that's going to be easy for everybody to read.
Yeah, I think saying the word of the color is good for those routes.
Is there anybody online who wants to chime in? I will take silence as no. Did you us did you just want the discussion, or do you want us to be like, this is what we decide as a group?
I think the discussion was good. Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, I had one question if we go back.
Do it.
I was talking to Doug about it earlier, and you were over there. I was thinking of coming over, but you were too busy talking. On page 3, under the proposed guidelines so far, my thought when I first seen that sentence of the word rapid and limited stop will be removed. And I wrote here, why? The reason I say that is I used to take the bus quite a bit, and on a particular line, some of them were stopping at every corner, and some of them were limited stop.
Right.
And if we take away limited stop, again, I'm just gonna choose a number, 10.
I'm just gonna jump.
Ooh, is that the 10 limited, or is that the 10 stopping at every corner? And if I get on the one that's supposed to be limited, but it doesn't say it, as I told Doug, I may be going, wait, hey, I wanted to stop back there, you passed me.
Yeah, I can explain that,
Okay,
the
great.
reasoning for that proposed guideline. So for rapid is, that is currently shows up on bus rapid transit routes that are
Yeah.
already named. So we're like, well, is it really providing more information than people need? And our hope is to have less panels so that you get the information you need. Now for limited stop, our service patterns have like changed pretty regularly since COVID has happened. We truly don't have that many limited stop routes left, and most of them are getting replaced by bus rapid transit routes in a sense. So, and the thing is, we don't have routes like a 10 local and 10 limited stop. Like pre-COVID, we had the 10 and the 59. And the 59 was the limited stop version of it. So the number tells you whether or not it's limited stop because it's a different route and everything. So we determined that it's not providing enough additional information to people to be useful. And we find that having the streets traveled on and the destination be rotating more frequently is more important to people. Does that answer your question?
It does. I still think that somehow we should make it still be, so that people know that that's a limited stop bus. Even if it's not, like you said, 10:59, still if somebody sees that bus, it's like, oh yeah, this is taking me down road XYZ. But now they can't get off for 10 blocks. They're gonna be a little upset.
Example, like the 54M and the 54. If you take away that letter, I'm gonna jump on any 54 that comes. And I might not wanna take the 54, I might wait a few more minutes to take the 54AM.
I will say that in the case of the 54, all 54s are limited stop, no matter what, if it's the 54M or the 54. The M is just whether or not it goes to Maplewood, while the 54 that doesn't have that letter ends in downtown St. Paul.
It's the reason why I would want the letter, right?
Yeah.
But you're keeping the letters, so there's
Yeah,
no.
we're not getting rid of the letters. It would be getting rid of the word So like right now, if I recall correctly, the 54 would flash between like three panels. One saying, like if it's a 54M, one, I think it would say Maplewood Mall. The next one would say via airport, and then it would say limited stop. So the idea is we want to parse down to where we can to two panels. So that people are seeing that Maplewood Mall via airport more often, so they understand where the bus is going.
Sounds good.
So there's no instance where limited stop conveys needed information, is what you're saying?
Right. Like if I
If
think
you
I
know
would
the
be,
lines.
I would be more concerned. Like so, for an example, Los Angeles has bus routes that have the same route number, and some of them are local services and some are limited stop services. Then I would be more concerned if that was our type of service pattern, because then you wouldn't be convening whether or not this is making local stops or limited stops. Whereas when we have limited stop buses, they're either bus rapid transit now, because that's generally the direction we've been going, or they're numbered routes that are that number. It's not the same number as the local route.
And you're freeing up space for information that is important.
Correct.
Good.
That's so.
Yeah. Any other conversation on this, folks? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I learned some stuff today.
Must be 1 o'clock.
Every Wednesday. All right, Melissa.
Yep, first one.
This seems like an appropriate next Next topic after
Getting a
that.
lot of transit information today.
Yes. Bus announcement system updates, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Bisila. I'm a product manager with Transit Information. I work with Nathan. All right, so today I want to give you an update on some changes we've made to bus announcements. Just for some context, I believe that my colleagues presented to you prior to my coming on board. In December of 2023, we made a transit information presentation to TAAC about the state of bus announcements. And one of the key findings that we reported at that time was that 5% of bus announcements we have errors related to stop requested interruptions. What that meant was when you were riding a bus, if a rider pushed the stop requested button or pulled the little thing and an announcement was being made, usually those are wayfinding announcements telling you where you are in the transit system, that would interrupt that announcement and you wouldn't hear where you were. So that proved to be quite confusing to riders. So that's feedback that we were able to present to you all. In June of 2023, so a year ago, actually yesterday, I was hired on, so I just reached my 1-year anniversary. So I was tasked with following up on some of that feedback. In Q4 of last year, we tested a change on a single bus in order to see if we could reduce that confusion. So we tested that stop requested change to deprioritize stop requested. That worked. In Q1, we decided to pilot that change on the A line and get some feedback. Part of our concern there is we just wanted to understand if we were going to cause any other issues by making that change. And then in Q2, so starting in April, we actually rolled out that change to the rest of the bus fleets. So now when you ride a bus on our transit system, if you request stop requested, it is now, it'll play after the announcement, if an announcement is playing. So I'm sorry, did you have a question?
No, I was gonna say, you can advance the screen.
Oh, I'm so sorry. First, okay. So, what is deprioritizing stop requested? Basically, what that means is whenever a rider is on a bus and they press the stop requested button, if there is an announcement playing, that announcement will follow through, so it'll complete. And then the stop requested announcement will play immediately following that announcement. So again, our approach was to first test it on a bus, which we did in October, November. We piloted on the A line in February and March. And when we did that pilot, we actually gathered feedback from riders. We had a member of this committee tested as well and got rider feedback from, I believe 2 people. There was little to no rider confusion reported during that pilot. We also checked in with operators, and operators reported little to no issues associated with the change. I think a few had some concerns, but for the most part, no riders came forward with any problems navigating the system. And then, as I said earlier, we had a couple people representing the TAAC committee who were able to test that as well. So after all of that feedback was gathered, we determined that there would be no negative consequences to making that change, and we rolled it out starting at the beginning of April. And so by now, when you ride a bus, you should be able to see that change. So hopefully that does remove any of the confusion people were experiencing, and we believe that this is an improvement overall. Okay. So, I do want to report we are ongoing our announcements oversight. So that one audit that we did and reported here, that wasn't the end of our work on making sure that the announcements quality is where it needs to be. We've started doing regular audits, so we have Rep 2s from our TIC that actually are going out on a pretty regular basis and checking to see how our announcements are if they're playing accurately. In Q1, out of 399 announcements that we audited, we had an 84% pass rate. And a pass is basically they could hear the announcement playing. The announcement played what we expected it to play. There were 3 buses in that time frame along the DC and 75 that there was quite a few announcements on those buses that didn't play, or like a significant number, which is how we got to that 84%. So I'm just tracking that down with our partners in the Transit Control Center and seeing if maybe sometimes Transit Master, which is our CAT AVL system, that gets shut off. I think the 75 was, we have to reach out to another transit agency to get some information on that one. Q2 audits are in progress. Right now we've completed approximately, audits on approximately 105 announcements, and we've shifted to doing more auditing of local routes. So in Q1, we were able to cover all of the BRTs, but we want to continue to look at routes that have high ridership and make sure that the announcements are playing effectively there. In addition to going out on the buses, we are looking at Route Manager. It's a tool within Transit Master, which is our CAT AVL. And we're just checking to make sure that the data quality is what we expect it to be. We address things like missing landmarks and points of interest. I think those are really important pieces of information for riders. We make sure that routes are named correctly. Sometimes we have in our database, we have numeric numbers for BRT routes, and that has to be translated to names. And then we just clarify that the right street is announced. Sometimes we have on-ad issues where a bus turns off and we're announcing a different street name than what the rider would expect. So when we do see those, we are clarifying that as well. Oop, next slide. All right, so let's talk about strategic improvements. So there's a couple of things that we're working on doing to improve the quality of the announcements that we make in our bus system. One is we're looking at ways to automate audio content production. So if you ride a bus right now, if you're riding a BRT, so that would be any of the numbered or lettered bus routes, that content all gets produced by a talent in a studio. So each time we launch a new route, we have to engage with our talent to produce new audio content for us. Technology being what it is now, we actually have pretty human, lifelike text-to-speech capabilities, and so we're exploring the opportunity to use that in order to produce better audio content. And what that does is that improves our agility, meaning we can flex with riders' needs and produce different audio content on demand. We also are looking to centralize the management of audio content. We have content that we have for buses, we have stuff we use for trains, we have content that we produce for our platforms, and then of course you'll get content that we produce on when you push the button at the annunciator. So we're just trying to essentially manage all of that information, again, to make sure it's fresh, it's up to date, it's accurate, and it's just a better way for us to make sure that riders are getting the information that they need. And then lastly, we're evaluating our continued relationship with ARIA. So ARIA is a tool or a product that people can use with their mobile devices that helps riders with vision impairments navigate our system. They have a visual interpreter that they can engage with that will help them understand what information is being viewed. And so we'll continue to look at that as a tool we can offer to riders as part of our normal contract negotiations. We also evaluate other products that are available in the marketplace. So if there's something similar out there or something that does something better that we can provide at a better cost to the council, we will look at that as well. All right, so that's basically it in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few. Thank you for the presentation. I'm glad this gets audited and you guys are, working on shoring up things if there's issues. That's great. I just want to clarify, and I think you had done so, and I just
Sure.
Again, want to make sure it's clear. In Q1, 399 announcements audited, 84% pass rate. That was specific to like 3 buses, like that 16% failure rate? Or was this on 399 announcements? Was that on? I'm trying to understand, like, if it's particular to like a bus itself and that one
Sure.
system, or are these sporadic throughout many different routes?
Actually, probably should help to understand the methodology, which will give you a little bit more information. So what we do is we have our Rep 2s download we have a form that we've given them where we download a route with all of the announcements that would be presented to the riders on that route. And they'll get on at a certain point in the route because they don't always ride the entire route when they're doing the audit. They might ride it for like 10 stops. So they'll make sure that they have the announcements that they would need to hear for those 10 stops. And then they'll listen for the announcement to be played. So out of 399 announcements, so that would be the total number of announcements they would have expected to hear, they audited all of the BRTs with the exception of, I believe, red and gold, but I believe they got to the ACD. They did the ACD routes, and I believe that they did the orange route as well in Q1. I don't have the data immediately available in front of me, so I'd have to go look. But, and then I would say the total number of buses audited really depends on how many times they were able to do an audit of that particular route. So they may have done at least one bus, maybe 2 or 3 buses for a particular route.
So the audit it'd probably be very labor intensive to do every bus and every route.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that, if there was an issue, that would be complaint driven, or someone's like, I couldn't hear that announcement.
That is correct. That is correct. It's unfortunate. It's very difficult for us to determine. There is no proactive or technological way for us to determine an error rate based on log data, because that log data is not really available. We would have to pull it out of Transit Master, and it's very labor intensive, and it's not very accurate from what I remember from the last presentation, which is why we decided to move towards this audit approach, because it gave us the best chance to really understand what riders would experience in the field. If you think about an audit, you're trying to understand a snapshot in time.
A sample size, of course. Like I said, it would be very difficult to audit everything.
Correct.
Personally, 84%, depending on what kind of test you're taking, that's either great or it could be good. We really need to improve it. So
Yes,
a
that
lot
is
of our
correct.
ADA metrics that we use with Transit is in the 90s and 95%. Because if
Yes.
I'm relying 100% on auditory cues into what to do, where I am,
Yes.
and 16% of the time I could be missing those cues, that's very hard on people that rely on it. So I'm glad we're doing the audits, trying to find the bugs and stuff like that. But from an accessibility perspective, hopefully we can get those numbers higher.
Yep,
I don't have the answers to that.
Absolutely.
The only other thing I wanted to get a better understanding on is the data quality portion. You said clarify the right street is announced, because sometimes it gets it wrong. Is that a bus taking a wrong turn, which I wouldn't imagine is the case, or is that a route changed and the information wasn't updated? Because again, if I'm using auditory cues and I think I'm on X street when
Sure.
I'm actually on Y street and I get out, and now I'm totally
Correct.
lost essentially and kind of have to wait there. I'm trying to understand what that issue
Sure,
might
no,
be.
that's a great question. So this is a situation where we call it on-at. So a bus might be traveling on a route on a given street, and then it might make a turn onto a cross street, and that's where the stop is. But instead of announcing the street name of where the stop is, they would announce the street name of where the bus was following the route. That would be the on. And occasionally in our data, the way we produce content right now for bus announcements is we have a system called Phrasemaker. And this is just a tool that the council has created in-house. And it uses some business rules to come up with the right phrase to be able to produce an audio snippet, right? So those business rules more often than not will announce the right street, but there's occasionally we miss that on at, and we should be announcing the at, not the on. And so we're looking at updating Phrasemaker this year, starting that process. It might not be completed until next year, but just making sure that those business rules are accurate. So what we do is, instead of looking at the system that's producing those phrases, we're looking at the output of the phrases in Transit Master to see, oh, I noticed that this was not correct. And so we're auditing the data, the resulting data, to make sure that everything looks correct. We have a person in the TCC whose job it is solely to manage the I mean, he's got other responsibilities, but one of his responsibilities is to manage all of this data, which he is quite on top of. We're just giving them a second look into the system from a transit information perspective, just to, again, to make sure that those data quality errors are addressed.
Excellent, thank you.
Another question. Does this incorporate, let's say you have a detour that you know is going to be happening for quite some time?
Sure.
And so that does incorporate.
Yes, that's a great question. So every quarter is when we update our announcement data for local routes. As I said before, for BRTs, it's a completely different process because those routes never change.
Yeah.
But for long-term detours, so these are detours that take place for longer periods of time. So we have advance notice. We do mid-quarter changes to announcements to account for that. It's not 100%,
Right.
and we do our best. Part of the challenge with maintaining announcements on buses is that buses are like rolling computers. And so they actually have systems on board that have to get updates from a central server, and they have to go to the garage to get those updates. So it's pretty labor intensive, which is why detours are not always announced, because they may not be. The detour may not take long. I mean, it may take longer to get the bus updated with the information than the detour actually happens. So,
Thank you.
Good questions. Anybody else? Take it away, Doug.
So when I drove, when we went into the downtown areas, it seemed like the announcements would just go kind of like haywire. Is that because of the buildings? Is that still a thing? I guess I haven't noticed.
So sometimes that happens when there's a lot of information in close proximity to one another because there's zones within Transit Master, and so sometimes information gets backed up. I don't have a really good answer for how to solve for that because it's a limitation of the system itself, and it's a third party, it's a vendor managed application. Again, I think it's more or less we're trying to do the best we can to audit things and really address glaring issues. If there is a systemic issue where it comes down to the capability of the system itself to do a certain thing, we can work with the vendor to try to improve that. And as of right now, I haven't seen anything in our audits that would indicate that would be the appropriate solution. But I think if there's something that you're hearing and needs attention, I would encourage you guys to reach out to me directly. And I apologize, I did not put my contact information in the presentation. So if there's a way to distribute my information after this, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, because what I can do is have my Rep 2s go out and audit that and gather that information so that I can work with the TCC or somebody who's managing that system to make sure that we can tweak it if we need to.
Any other questions, comments from anybody?
maybe
Yeah,
just one
go ahead.
more.
Go ahead, Eric.
It's
You can do
probably a
3
sil-
more if you want.
It's probably a silly idea, and I know they do so much anyways, but the drivers, they're there all the time on that route, hearing the messages over and over and over again, right? Maybe leaning into them to voluntarily, not audit and not, again, try to press more work on them, because obviously we want them to drive the bus, keep everybody safe and all that stuff. But, if there's a bug in their ear or there's a training session, which is like, hey, we have these messages, they probably could even see the script provided to them, where they can look through the script and understand what it's supposed to be, and as they're driving, if they happen to see some kind of discrepancy, then be able to reach out to help address any issues that could be going on. It might be silly, but food for thought, I guess.
It is food for thought. I certainly can talk to my team, my management team, to see what opportunities there are for training. I know operators have a lot of things, a lot of information to juggle, and so I don't want to discount that. And then safety and just being able to pay attention, because it is a lot of information to manage for them. But I think as a product manager, I probably have a little bit of a bias towards technology and hoping that we can find better ways to use our technology to improve how navigable our transit system is for riders with disabilities. I can tell you that since coming on board, that's one of the things that I've really tried to lean into. I'm working with Doug to understand what that user experience or user journey looks like. I've learned some really interesting things about that. The way I think about announcements is that it's another way to receive information, but for riders that don't, like with vision impairments, it's the primary way that they receive information. So I'm really trying to understand what is that user journey for a rider with a vision impairment, or somebody who's really relying upon auditory information to understand where they're going. And I have noticed that there are some challenges with how we present information. And I think that there are some technological, room for technological improvements. Obviously, that's capital. And so we are evaluating, all of those systems are under evaluation today. It isn't just buses. We're looking at that for buses, light rail, platforms. So we'll continue to explore those. In the meantime, if there is an opportunity for us to have better communication from the operators, certainly I'm not opposed to that, but I have very limited ability to affect that type of change. I have more control over the technology.
Fair enough, thank you.
All right, another good discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Cruising right along. We have Julie Sellner here, who's going to give us we'll avoid the slides that we did last month, but we do have some new information from Metropolitan.
I think what we should probably do is a full presentation on an annual basis, because that's when we have our vehicle updates and personal updates and things like that. But I think that you're right, we should be looking at performance cues on a monthly basis, so I'll revise this so that it's only based on performance for our monthly meetings, okay?
I think
So
that's
I'm
it.
gonna go ahead and jump to slide 10 in the packet that you have here. And we'll start with all trips versus ADA and non-ADA trips.
So slide 10. Oh,
Oh, I could move
Yay,
over there,
Kevin.
Kevin, I'm so sorry, would you prefer that?
you can do it from back here. it's
Thank
fine.
you.
You can do it from back here.
Okay, so I will find line 10, sorry about that.
It's up to you. We're all one big happy family.
Maybe,
We have an hour, so.
there we go. This is our performance or KPI data, and this is for all trips, which include both ADA and non-ADA, and then we'll break it out into ADA and non-ADA. Our on-time performance year-to-date is at 93.5%. Out of 669,000 trips, 43.5 thousand were late pickups. Our appointment time performance is at 93.4%. Out of approximately 204,000 trips with appointment times, 1,700 we arrived too early, and 11,600 we arrived late. For our on-board time performance, that's the length of a trip, was 97.3%. So out of the 669,000 trips performed year-to-date, 18,000 rides were too long. Which sounds like we're doing stunning unless you're one of those 3%ers whose trips were longer. We've had examples of that of individuals in this room just this week. And as far as on time too, right, within the last 7 days. So there's always room for improvement, and we continue to do that. If we're looking at just our ADA trips, there we go. On-time performance for just ADA is 93.6%. 482,000 trips before, 31,000 were late pickups. Appointment time performance, also 93.9%. Of 138 trips with appointments, 1,200 we arrived too early, 7,900 we arrived late for. Our on-board time performance is at 96.9% for ADA. 482,000 trips performed, 14,900 the rides were too long or extended past the maximum on-board time. If we look at the non-ADA, on-time performance for non-ADA is 93.4%. 500 performed trips, 12,400 were late pickups. Appointment time performance of 93.4%. 65,557 trips performed, 570 we arrived too early for, and 3,752 we arrived too late. The on-board time performance for non-ADA is at 98.3%. Of the 513 trips performed, 3,375 trips were too long. And if we continue on in this, we kind of get back to the annual review that we have done previously of data that's already been supplied. So what I will do is instead, I think maybe what I should be providing is instead of not just year-to-date, but also on a monthly basis, so that you have that comparative to look at. So I will revamp this for our next meeting. Are there any preferences to information that you would like to see?
First of all, thank you very much for putting those numbers in. That makes it much easier, I think, to wrap our heads around. And I do like the separating it out between arrivals, between early
And
late, yeah. I mean, it's great that the non-ADA trips are actually bolstering the numbers on the ADA trips, which didn't used to be the case.
Well, the ADA is our priority, so yeah, I agree.
I mean, we can get weedy here if y'all want to. Julie can take us into the weeds. I know we have some folks on this committee who like to dig down into data. Maybe to prompt members a little bit here, I like the monthly aspect of it. What are like data points that we can request of you? Like what's something, I'll maybe kick the question back to you. What's something that you think is interesting that you like
Well, there are things that
this
we
data?
watch on a daily basis and even an hourly basis, and that's our on-time performance and maximum on-board time, because those are significant to our service delivery. Yeah. Productivity is another thing that we watch very closely with our providers. How many trips are they providing per hour? How significant productivity information would be for this committee would really be for you to determine. But I'm happy to provide it at our next meeting and we can have that discussion. But those are the priorities that we really look at is our on time, our on board, and Cheryl's smiling at me, and appointment times. Those are vital to us. We actually have a big screen in our customer service center that's tracking all three providers and their on-time performance and on-board time throughout the day. So we
In
do
real
take
time?
this very seriously. We do watch that very closely.
In real time?
In real time.
That's kinda cool.
Well, as real time as drivers are updating the system, yes.
What other sort of, well, I guess this maybe to try and prompt more questions, what other sort of data points do you collect? Maybe you don't have to report it to the feds, but you still collect stuff that maybe we would be interested in, like driver complaints or like incident stuff or, you know.
I haven't played with all the reporting on that. Can I do a little bit of digging and maybe find some additional suggestions that I can bring to the committee?
Yeah,
Would you, okay.
because I think it might just be a matter of we don't know what we don't know type of
Exactly.
thing. Like, oh, I'd really like to hear about this, but I don't even know what this
Well,
is.
and I think about all the information that I dig into on a daily basis. If I just looked at that at the beginning of a day through an end of a day and mark those down and see what you'd be interested in discussing on a monthly basis, I'd be open to that. Okay.
I'm gonna, this might not be a good idea because the list might be too long, but what are all the data points that are collected? Is it like a list of like 60 or like 15 or like 2,000?
Closer to the hundreds point than not. If you looked at our dashboard of different things that we can dig into, yeah, it would be, I'm sorry that I can't give you an exact number on that.
No, it's okay.
But it's closer to 100 different types of data points that we watch. And these are the most telling of how we're doing on a daily basis, how it's affecting your lives.
And this is what you have to report to the feds too.
Say that again.
And this is what you have to report to the feds too,
Right.
yes.
Right.
Okay.
The NTD miles and things like that, I don't think that you're interested in our deadhead hours, deadhead miles, things like that. So I probably won't even bring that to the table.
I don't know, we got
But
some
these are things that we
wonky
track
people.
on a daily and hourly basis as well. So because of our federal reporting requirements.
And I have a hunch that probably Sam and Ken would be quite interested in some of the other data points as well.
Oh, and they probably have access to it, so.
Yeah. Maybe, and again, I don't want to make your job harder than we already do.
No, holding us accountable is
Because-
part of the job.
Because it's a little more curiosity from my standpoint to like what are all 235 data points collected beyond these 8 or 9 on time performance, appointment time, on board. Yeah.
Number of passengers per hour, number of miles per hour, revenue hours versus deadhead hours, vehicle hours versus driver hours versus revenue hours, service hours versus revenue hours. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of data in there. And so breaking out what is vital to you to be able to say, okay, are you really utilizing your efforts to the best of our ability? That's a whole different discussion on what those data points are. But as in operations, we're going to monitor those driver hours to revenue hours to service hours, deadhead miles. You probably go through this too with Metro Transit.
Oh, I don't do the numbers, that's for sure. But we do. Somebody does that.
I think for,
Passenger satisfaction, on-time performance, those are big key KPI indicators of how well we're performing.
yeah, I think the data points we might be most interested in are these ones because this is where the service meets the customer and the person that we're trying to represent here and to find where there's deficiencies. And I think taking kind of David's point is you have hundreds of maybe data points, but some might be related to the operations that maybe don't directly interact with the customer. And it's those data points like these where it could be complaints and other data points that are customer influenced, I think would be the list that I personally would want to see, because that's where we can, as a committee, represent the people
They would
that
have
we're
to be
representing.
validated complaints, just not number of complaint inflow.
I don't know. I mean, it's however the data is presented and whatever those metrics are you're collected on. So
Another difficulty that providers face are the number of no-shows that we have on a daily basis. You have your advanced cancellations, you have same-day cancellations. All of those are going to affect operations. You have your same-day demands, but the number of no-shows where our drivers are en route or end up at a address where they're not picking up a passenger, that's wasted, inefficient time that could be utilized to improve these numbers to people who are really traveling. So that's something else that we watch incredibly closely is our no-shows, cancel dates, and cancels at doors. Daily, Cheryl and I have our hands into that kind of data, daily. And trying to manage that and that our passengers are using the system as efficiently so that we can make the system efficient.
Any other data-related questions?
I'm a data nerd, so I do not mind.
The world appreciates people like you.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead, Betsy.
Jill, you're commenting about different things, and it brings back when I was riding Metro on a very muchly so regular basis, and they were running behind or whatever, but then I would be out and see buses are sitting at, I don't know, like I live right by a big park. I live by Judd Scott Playfield. And there's one or two of them sitting there in the parking lot just chit-chatting or doing whatever it is like.
I know, frustrating,
Really?
is it? Until you pull up those two routes and you see that one has arrived about 2 minutes early for his next pickup. The other one may be getting his mid-morning break because he started at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So you're right, we may be misinterpreting what we're seeing as to opposed to what's actually happening in operations. But I've witnessed this myself. And I've actually gone in and pulled up those routes to see what was going on because I'm a data nerd. And that's what you find is usually the cause. Now, if we find somebody is wasting time, that's something we're going to jump on right away and to ensure that that's not on an ongoing basis, that retraining or counseling, discipline, whatever is required, is passed on to the provider to follow through with.
Well, that's that's really good that you're able to see that on your screen or whatever if somebody's got downtime and they're not doing something.
Especially if there's a high demand time, but it's very, not often that you're going to find slack time within peak hours. And that's part of the issue that we have with same-day rides during peak times or even same-day rides going into non-ADA areas and why that is restricted or not available on a necessary basis, on a usual basis. So you're being very good to me today, Claudia. I'm going to remember that.
She'll call you later. She'll call you later.
I have my issues, I'm staying out of it.
A lot of things that we hear about is routing. So if they pick you up in, let's say, Minneapolis, and they have to run to New Brighton, and then they're down in St. Anthony, and they're returning to Minneapolis, what we may not realize is there's enough time on your schedule to get you back to that Minneapolis by your appointment time, but this person has to be picked up by 2 o'clock. This person needs to be dropped by 3 o'clock, and now we're going to get you dropped by 3:15. So sometimes it is just poor routing. But sometimes the routing is necessary in order to achieve what each person in the system needs to achieve. But there is both happening. We're human, we make mistakes. The system, as well developed as it is, and Trapeze, I've worked with multiple paratransit software. Trapeze is the best. It's also the most expensive, and it doesn't mean that it's always 100% as efficient as it could be. And that's why we need human eyes in there, and that's why we need human people doing routing. But human people make mistakes in routing too, and I'm sorry, ladies, you've experienced this. And I'm very much aware of that, and those are things that we try to improve. And so when we get a complaint, each issue is then investigated. Was it routing? Was it the driver? Did the GPS go haywire? And we know how happy we all are with the GPS systems, right? And please know that we are in that process of having driver mate initiated, implemented. The technical issues that we're still dealing with on that. But, and Cheryl, feel free to jump in anytime over there.
No, you're
okay?
doing great. You're doing great, nerd.
So as perfect as we try to make the systems and the numbers, you know, you get above 90, 95%, you're doing really well as a paratransit system. But when you're that individual that's on the other side of that 95%, we're not doing well. And there's got to be ways to make that better. And that's what we try to achieve, or we help to provide the feedback that's necessary for providers to be able to see how we can improve it.
Well, back when I was using Metro very often, especially going to the session, to the Capitol during session, kind of like you were just explaining about going here, there, and still getting me to where I need to be on time. It used to be very, very frustrating. I would get picked up at a shopping mall, and I'll probably never forget this one. We went literally across the street to pick up somebody, although they could not be picked up for 20-some minutes or something like that.
And you waited.
And we had to sit
Those
in that
things we
parking
need
lot.
to limit as much as possible. Because then we should have just waited to pick them up and then come back and pick you up. Would that have put you outside the window, your pickup window?
No, I don't think so.
Those are things that we try to examine daily, that we try to catch before they happen. And you're explaining this one, and it will never leave you because you don't forget those things.
Yeah, oh gosh.
But what's a good thing is there's not 20 of those that you remember in a row. So we are improving, we are looking, we're paying attention.
Well, honestly, as you already know, it's been a few years since I've used you guys
That's okay,
on a
I'm
regular
gonna take
basis.
advantage of this moment anyway, okay?
Or when you go and you get picked up and like they will go down Old Shakopee to Eden Prairie. And then they come past and they go pick up somebody out on the east side. And literally they're going back and forth, or it's happened at the Capitol. They go, I think it must be a work place. They go through downtown, cross the river to something, come back and pick up somebody at the Capitol. 20 minutes after me. So why did I go ride in the vehicle for 20 minutes? Right. At the time.
Forgive me, I like to think those are more human error than system error. So as perfect as we try to make the world, drivers call off, drivers get sick, incidents happen with passengers on board. You think you're gonna load somebody in 2 minutes, it actually takes you 25 minutes to get them loaded. Another passenger gets moved to another route because they're gonna get to them faster than that driver would have because of whatever happened. But now that person is experiencing exactly what you did, also that we could get there on time, and they'll go through that. Double back is what I usually refer to it as. Things happen on live day that we don't necessarily always have control on that. And I can see when you're riding that bus, you're sitting there, how in the world does this make sense? But when you're looking at the screen of 200-300 routes, this route run down, this route's being held up, this route can take you, and even though you're gonna go back and forth, you're gonna get there on time, you're gonna get picked up on time. So not always seeing that big picture. And I don't know if seeing the big picture would necessarily help when you're the individual in that situation, correct? So even though these seem like reasonable explanations, when you're experiencing it yourself, it doesn't seem reasonable. And those are the things that we try to improve upon.
One other question just occurred. How are we in driver driver shortage or not driver shortage, it's the driver supply.
I know what you're saying, and I'm not quite up on all the numbers. We actually have our big provider meeting, not next week, but the week after, and I'll get updated on a lot of that. Clay, who is the manager of operations, I believe probably receives daily, if not weekly, updates on that. I only kind of hear it every week or so.
Yeah.
I know that we're far better than we have been. I know that we're getting close to where there are some non-ADA areas that we're currently not providing service due to our driver shortage, and we're getting to the point that we can release that. We're far closer to that than we were 3 months ago when I started.
Yeah.
But exact head counts, I'm not exactly sure. I know that we're doing better. Like our vehicles, same thing with our vehicles. 75% of our fleet is now between 23 and 25 years. 2023 vehicles to 2025 vehicles. Well, just a couple of years ago, boy, that fleet looked pretty hard, and you wondered how we were ever going to overcome that.
Exactly.
So, patience, steady, and
Yeah.
keeping your nose to the grindstone, we get there.
Yeah.
With this, and I know you didn't go over,
There have not been any denials since our last meeting, so that hasn't been updated, but I'm happy to put that up there if you'd like.
because I know that was one of the reasons that I had to step away from Metro.
It's
is
because of the
Because of the denials, but then I'm non-ADA. But I've always found that interesting when I keep seeing 0, and I'm like, really? Maybe I could go back to it then. But
That is
I have a
both
hard time believing
ADA
it.
and non-ADA. 0 denials year to date for ADA and non-ADA. And I double checked it yesterday morning just to make sure before I came into the meeting today.
Really, wow.
So we are doing great that way in 2025. I wish I could take the credit for it, but I can't.
You looking to change that stat, Patsy?
Huh?
Are you looking to change that stat?
Well, that's the only thing, man. We were at 0. Maybe I better not. Because I don't want to ruin it for people. That's so nice. I don't want to ruin it. But on the other hand, if you really are going to be no denials, I could go back to using it. But the other thing that is a concern for me was, and I find it interesting when I see the numbers on here, but for somebody like myself I've had a traumatic brain injury, and along with that, I've got narcolepsy. So sitting on a vehicle,
Period of time.
I'm almost like a kid, that constant, whoa, man, that could put you to sleep real quick. I don't know how many times I've fallen asleep for I don't know how long. And that's really not what I really want to be happening.
No, and it's not very comfortable either, is it?
Yeah. So that was another drawback for me.
It is a shared transportation system. If we had our own vehicles, we could get there in a couple of minutes, but when we're sharing it, and we're not just sharing it with a handful of people. I mean, we have close to 20,000 people that are using this on a very regular basis.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of trips per day.
It was much better when you guys had the sedans, because then there wasn't a lot of back and forth that would happen.
Yeah, well, they were primarily for overflow when they first started becoming introduced, but they've been incorporated into regular routing now, so, but you're right, we don't have very many sedans. I think we only have like 22 across 3 providers.
Really?
So what is that, 6, 7 each, something like that?
Yeah. I didn't think you had any more. I don't see them anymore. I didn't think you had sedans anymore.
We do have a handful of vans, I think it's 33, if I recall off the top of my head, so that's what, about 11 per provider.
Wow.
They're actually distributed by the demand of the service area, not by the number of providers, so please don't hold me that they each have 11, but, yeah.
And that's those vans that you went with
Yeah,
us
they
that
have the
time.
lift on it.
That we
but-
went to go see, I don't know. David, how long ago was that? So it was quite a few months ago that Doug, you were probably involved in it. We went down to the parking ramp
That
down
was
there. We
before
seen
my
them.
time, Cheryl, is it?
year and a half ago? Yeah, well, that was before me too. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that was when you guys were working on the van situation.
It's a bit,
That was when there was the supply chain issues, right?
yeah.
And they came from Canada, and you guys could not be getting from Canada or something?
Yeah.
There was some with that.
We buy American.
So now how's that going? Those
Well,
vehicles
like I
were
said,
gonna-
our fleet is now 75% between 2023 to 2025. Most of our, 75% of our vehicles are in that year.
Cool.
So that is very good. That's an
Yes.
incredible improvement over just 4 years ago, so,
Yeah.
yep.
They were long past, I don't know, what do you call it, their date that they're supposed to be replaced by?
Vehicle life expectancy
Yes,
had,
yes, thank you, yes.
yes, it had. And I think I pushed the wrong button here.
It's okay. That was the direction I was headed in anyways, so you're doing good.
Yes. That's one way to do it.
Yeah.
Just turn it off.
I'm done, guys.
Drop the mic.
All right.
Thank you guys very much.
Since neither Daryl nor Ken are here, we're going to skip the subcommittee reports. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak? I don't see anyone. Would any members have member comment?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if that's something you can share now or anything you can share on how the appointments are going or the filling of some empty seats.
I was just thinking that I need to follow up with the organizations that are doing the appointing. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate the reminder. I'll have an update for you all next month on appointments, if we don't have appointments.
I'd like to add something if I could.
By all means.
We, several of us, 3 of us, went last week to participate, I think that was last Thursday, and participated both in the spring conversation as well at the Wilder Center, and then at a focus group here in this building. And it was, I thought, very valuable. The focus group itself was good. It was a group of maybe 10 people that use Metro Mobility. And to me, it was different levels of experience as well as different needs. There was one person that could only use cars, sedans. And it was so impressive to me. I just wanted to convey to people, I came away with, there's no one perfect way to use Metro Mobility. Whereas I can't go in, whereas I use my wheelchair all of the time. Some people can't use vans, or some people, and it made me very aware of that it's not making use of all of the services, but it's meeting the individual's needs. And it's not going to be perfect for everybody, but hopefully we're aware of what the need, that there's not one uniform person who's a Metro Mobility rider that looks, that wears a blue outfit and is rectangular. So I don't know, for what that's worth. I hope we do more focus, I thought it was really good.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it was fun day.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
Just one more thing. I know we had spoken about, I think it was last meeting, getting Mr. Bates a card for his service. I think he was here for over 10 years on the TAAC. I think even Jasmine or Sam had mentioned, like, if we got an email going, she might want to say some words, and we could write that on the card for her. I don't know if we forgot about it. I would be happy to get a card this month and then bring it into the next meeting if we want to, you know, maybe meet a little earlier or after the meeting. I'll take time to sign it, and again, they can. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I know I just got back from the restroom here and talking to a couple people in the hallway. But it's completely my fault or David's fault, either one, or Kevin's fault. Either, you can blame all three of us if you want.
No one's fault.
But I would make the motion that you go ahead and make the card. You just sign it. You go ahead and pick the card, and you just sign it for all of us and get it out there. That way,
I will go get a card.
that way we don't
my
have to
only
wait
re-
until next month. And you know,
My only request would be if we could reach out via email to people that attend virtually to see if they want to have
if they wanted something to say,
any words they want to add, and I can inscribe that on.
That's a good point, because if Sam made that comment, she probably had a couple words that she wanted to say particularly.
Yeah. So I'll bring that next meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
Alright.
Any other member comment?
Well, my other member comment is this, I mentioned it earlier, since Doug didn't want to take my comment before the meeting, I wanted to make sure I publicly mention it. I had taken a very interesting ride today on my way down here. And on my way down here, I got on the bus, as I typically do on a 54M, from Maplewood through downtown. And I was probably on about maybe 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes. Upon me getting on the bus, the driver strapped me in. 3 young ladies got on the bus, 3 young black girls, by the way, between the ages of 12 and 18. And as the driver proceeded to go on her way, she had to stop suddenly. And as she stopped suddenly, my chair had moved and had swayed. It almost went and tipped over in the aisle. A passenger had to run up and grab my chair and stop my chair from tipping over. At that moment, that really scared the girls. And they started to call names and started to be very inappropriate towards the driver. I told them, I said, shh, come on, girls, that's enough. Come on, it's not that serious. There's no reason to be saying those kind of things. It's not that serious. And by then there was probably 8 or so other people on the bus, and they were all saying, come on, let's go, what's going on, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, this bus ain't going anywhere until those 3 girls get off and the cops come, et cetera, et cetera. And then 2 other adults got up and said, what's going on, what's the issue, why are you mad at those 3 girls, and they're just calling you out for not doing your job. And she just got silent and wouldn't say anything. And then when the cops came, the girls, I had already walked off the bus before they got on the bus, and they told the bus driver or the cops what their side of the story was. It come to find out the driver had a previous interaction with them earlier for a non-fair payment. But then as we were kept proceeding, she allowed 3 other people to enter that bus when not paying their fare. They weren't black, by the way. They were all her color. I didn't really want to say any of this because I didn't really want anybody to know that I publicly called her a racist, because I believe she was. But the bus driver was ultimately flagged by the cop, and the cop told her she could go. I told them that I would make sure that I reported it on the behalf of everybody that was on that bus. And the fact that she obviously had a previous incident with these girls before, and she said she's left them before, and they were just trying to get to school, and they were just trying to spend the last 2 days of school that they couldn't. They said this driver has purposely left them on multiple occasions within the last week. And I told them I would make sure that it gets reported.
Any other member comment before we adjourn a little bit early? Awesome, thank you. 30 minutes of your life back.
No, sorry, you only allowed one.
Thank you for calling that in.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because I'll call it.
Panel that's up there with the
Doug, I
back.
said,
We have a
take it. She said,
And I think that,
council and hopefully.
does it show
Yeah,
up
I'll
on the
That's why I said it public way too, because Doug could take it. As a census committee, could take it and just forward it. Do a committee.
Sounds different.
Magic.
Yeah. Hear about this stuff.
So that one's
It was going a different direction. I'm glad it didn't go in that direction. So thank you.
I don't know which direction that was going to.
No,
but it was
I've been here about a year.
It was pretty, I mean, I didn't think